This is Gareth Southgate, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and I hope I find you well. This is episode 101. That's right, we broke into triple figures on the last podcast, which incidentally went down quite well, despite it being about those boring games. And it is still there to listen to on threelionspodcast.com or your chosen podcast provider. And speaking of which, a lot of the episodes are now available on YouTube. Again, just search Three Lions Podcast. I did do a couple a while back with subtitles for a listener who was hard of hearing and got in touch with me. Now I've found a way of uploading them instantly, so a little bit easier. There's no moving pictures, it's just the same audio recording, but via YouTube. So if you do know someone who has hearing difficulties, the option is there to put the subtitles on. So if you know of someone who may benefit from it, then please, by all means, please let them know about it. Now, last Thursday, the 25th of June, some exciting news was released. The venues for the 2023 Women's World Cup. Obviously, should the Lionesses make it, but the winners of the bidding in a joint effort were Australia and New Zealand. They came ahead of Colombia. Japan and Brazil, though they'd also shown previous interest but pulled out earlier in the race. Of course, it was held in France last year where 24 nations competed. Next time, it's going to be 32, which I have to say I am a little sceptical about. With all due respect, though, to the status of the women's game. But the Men's World Cup was 24 teams in 1982, only increasing to 32 in 1998. And it's bad enough that the 2026 tournament is supposed to be 48 nations. But on the whole, a good point for the women's game. A European Championships in 2022 and a World Cup a year later. The possibility of the Lionesses winning both? Who knows? And of course, if it's a successful tournament, then maybe they will be considered for the men's in due course. And having personally been to 6 of the designated grounds, I'd like to think they'll do a good job. Although it is going to be a pain for TV viewing back here though, isn't it? And then the following day, Friday, 26th of June, the exact dates for the Nations League games were announced. They are in September, away to Iceland, Saturday the 5th, away to Denmark on Tuesday the 8th, into October, home to Belgium, Sunday the 11th, home to Denmark on Wednesday the 14th, then into November, away to Belgium, Sunday the 15th, and home to Iceland on Wednesday the 18th. Now, the original draw and dates were made on the 2nd of March, which seems a lifetime ago now. But from what I can gather, done a little scratching around, the first 2 fixtures away to Iceland and Denmark are the only 2 that remain the same from the original schedule. So worth checking any flights you may have made. Although at this moment in time, still no confirmed news as to what the situation is regarding us as spectators. And indeed, no one knows what the future holds. Which seems an incredibly obvious thing to say, but just feel the need to. Now, you may remember a while back, we spoke to Marco Kunauer, a German England fan. Well, on the back of that, I have spoken with another foreign England fan. And that chat is coming up very soon, which I hope you will enjoy. But first though, something slightly different. I was given the opportunity to speak with a broadcast journalist about what it's like to be within the confines of a football stadium in these current times. And I thought it was too good and too interesting to turn down. So to start with in this episode, this is my chat with Tom Gayle. Now, something not directly England related, but something I'm sure you'll be interested in hearing about. Of course, football is back, whether you agree with it or not. The Premier League and the Championship return to England after a break of 100 plus days. And of course, apart from players and staff, very few people are allowed within that stadium area. But I'd like to welcome Tom Gayle, football broadcast journalist, to the Three Lions podcast, who has been privy to a few games. Tom, hello there.
Hello, mate. Yes, very lucky, Russ. Very lucky to be one of those few who is allowed in. So
you are a football broadcast journalist working for the likes of the BBC or Sky ITN. You've been to Huddersfield, Wigan at the point of speaking, and Villa, Chelsea. What's it like? What's it like for you? The protocol, the atmosphere. What's it like on the inside?
Well, it's sort of been brewing, hasn't it, for a while, I guess, because obviously, in line with government legislation, that's where we started to, over time, get a feel that, wow, football is going to happen. And particularly as a freelancer, this is, in a purely selfish reasons, this is a large part of my income. So I was definitely very excited. But as of the whole of football, it's been a situation which has been treated with huge amounts of respect. So lots of planning, lots of communication. There was talk of maybe whether I could do the reporting from home, so watching it on the telly and still connect to radio stations from home. But obviously through time, it was granted that members of the media would be allowed access to the stadium. All clubs have been in communication well in advance, so sending out basically the strict guidelines that we all need to follow. So even prior to attending the games, you had to fill in questionnaires, provide risk assessments, in order that your name gets ticked off that you're allowed entry. And then normally, those who are familiar with the broadcasting world, we can't get there early enough. People want to get in there a good few hours before to ensure all connections are in place, everything's stable, you're speaking to your producers, your editors, they can hear you. That's by and large degree been massively slashed. So now we're allowed in a maximum of an hour and a half before the kickoff time. So that's standard across all EFL fixtures and the Premier League. But even then, there is this obviously the opportunity to be still turned away, and the main reason for that is the temperature checks. So we submit our health questionnaire. By and large, a lot of that will be no. I've not had contact with people with COVID and whatnot, standard stuff like that. But ultimately, I guess the big decisive factor is the temperature check. So a lot of these, you go up to a screen, it does all that for you. Weird and wonderful world that we live in. You can just literally look at a screen, it reads your temperature. You get the A-OK, and obviously then you're allowed to proceed in. So you have to wear a mask at all times when inside the stadium or inside the complex. The only time you're allowed permission to take it off is when you're actually broadcasting. So for me as a commentator, reporter, there is that. But for example, the written boys and girls who are there also in the tribunes, they literally have to keep their masks on for the whole duration. Press room, so there is no press room, there's no media gathering area for teas and coffees, networking, chit chat, or food. It's literally you go to your seat, and then there is, as with social distancing, there's like adequate room between all of your colleagues and peers before obviously kickoff, mate. So that sets you the scene as regards to getting in there.
So we've seen various people in the stands, I guess people like yourselves. You're actually sitting in the seats that regular punters would be sitting in, supporters would be sitting in, are you?
I think probably not particularly for radio broadcasters, because basically we have a lot of infrastructure that's already in the press seats. So, the way we connect to radios, those ports, we need to be sat close to them. But you are right that, for example, written journalists who by and large just need somewhere to put their laptop and access to the Wi-Fi, you are correct. They have been literally sat where, a few months prior to that, I'd have lots of fans behind me, probably not happy with what I've had to say or so forth. But now it's socially distanced written journalists who are, like I say, sat in normally where the fans are sat.
So you can give a wave to your colleagues around you, can you?
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, it's always at the we're very privileged to be there, and effectively, no one wants to spoil it at all, do they? No. So everyone very respectful, ensures that there's always the adequate gaps, and because obviously, I guess that concept of you're only allowed in a short amount of time in, and once the action starts, you're obviously focused on that. half time, normally you'd go and grab a coffee or whatever, a bit of a chinwag again. Again, you just stay put, and then full time. That's where it's perhaps a little bit different for myself. So either I've been going down and doing pitch side interviews, which is completely new now, of this holding your microphone on a big pole. You sort of sat the other side of the barriers, or for my written colleagues, they all get access to a Zoom code. So again, they're normally used to attending media suites where the manager, the players walk in, throw questions at them. Now they all get granted a code. Each manager and at the very least will be doing a Zoom press conference afterwards. That's after they've done all their TV and radio commitments. So all the written colleagues, they get access to a Zoom code, and they're allowed in to ask questions via Zoom.
So, and you mentioned the action there. What's in front of you? What you're reporting back on? What is it like to see these players in action, but without the influence of a crowd around them? Are they affected, do you think, in that sort of manner?
Well, it's interesting because obviously there's no fans. That's standard across all fixtures that are happening throughout England. But each club, I guess, has perhaps conducted their own players and staff and managers and decided what they're going to do. I've been at the game in the Championship I was at. They were pumping in crowd noise and atmosphere. The Premier League game I was at, it was stone silent. So there is that differentiation. Slight differences with the tannoy. The Aston Villa tannoy was full and booming and large effects, whereas Huddersfield, it was very reserved. So again, it's that. And I suppose for all those members of staff, they're used to hearing their voices reverberate from a packed house, and likewise they're bumping out tunes to really get the atmosphere going. That's still going on, but obviously there's no one to sort of reciprocate and feed off that. Yeah. In terms of the action, for those who've watched it, it's not out the gate, high packed, high tempo. Games do seem to take a while to build into, because we have to take for granted, as you said at the start, over 100 days, 3 months of not being competitive, training. You can only replicate that to a certain degree, but now they're faced with that scenario of points on the line. There's an opposition, so it's teams are feeling each other out. And yeah, lots of, obviously you're hearing all that's being said from managers, from players, from officials even. So that's been very interesting. But it has just felt really weird. I say it's like you're looking in on this secret thing that's going on, particularly when you're there in the moment, because obviously, from the outside when you're on telly, you see its builders, the Championship, Sky doing, BT, BBC doing a great job of, football's back. It's amazing. But when you're there in the stadium, it does feel so lonely and eerie that you have to just remind yourself every now and again that this is actually proper football in front of you.
Yeah, very strange times indeed. But hopefully we can, obviously we'll get the back end of this season out the way, and hopefully can look forward to a new season with maybe, I hear there's talk of maybe reduced crowds. I know France are potentially looking at that. It may well happen here, maybe sooner rather than later. We don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think I guess it's, someone needs to set the tone, don't they? Like you said, I think it already is taking place abroad. I know there's talk in England of cricket. I remember the old Trafford. So the Lancashire CEO, he reckons he could get around about 6,000 to 7,000 into Old Trafford, socially distanced, and doing that safely. But as with all these things, it has to be signed and sealed off by the government. And I guess the overriding thing is, until the death rate and infection rate dramatically gets really low, I can't see anyone, unfortunately, other than that essential personnel of club staff and players, media, health and safety, all those essential things for these to go ahead. I can't see that changing anytime soon, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, I think that is the key thing. Health and safety is paramount in this, as has been said all along. Tom, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. You're on Twitter, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yeah, Tom_Gayle, Gayle, just to be specific on the spellings. Yeah, and certainly for the next month or so, I'm going to be here, there, and everywhere around the country attending football games as what's going to be a very exciting end to both the Championship and the Premier League seasons.
Oh, you're a lucky chap. Look after yourself, stay safe, and perhaps we can catch up again at some stage.
Look forward to it, Russ. You stay safe too, pal.
Cheers. I'd like to welcome to the Three Lions podcast as we're going global once again. This time we're going to Norway and an England fan from over there, Endre Kleiven. Hello, Endre.
Hello, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. You're our first Norwegian correspondent, as it were.
I'm very happy to be.
Whereabouts are you in Norway?
I live on the west coast, in the southwest coast, in Bergen. It's the second largest city of Norway.
Okay, very nice. I've heard about Bergen. I've heard nice things about Norway. It's not somewhere that I've been to yet, but it is very much on my radar. It's one of these places I'd like to get to.
Good.
I've been put in touch with you by a fellow England fan, Dean Cornish,
Yes.
who's recommended you, and we've just been speaking off air that you've got some good stories about how you met Dean and various other England supporters. We'll get on to that, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am 42 years old. I work as an airline pilot, and I have been for all my life just a big fan of football in general, and so it's a big interest for me. And like everyone else, I'm kind of missing it over the last couple of months, but we'll get through this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, being an airline pilot, are you grounded, as it were, I guess?
No, actually, we're not. It's a strange story, but I fly for a regional airline in Norway, and we're partly government subsidized. So for the last few weeks, we've actually been the largest airline in Europe in number of flights. So it's been a strange situation for us. So it's not quite business as usual, but we're not hurt the way others are in the business now.
Oh, that's good to hear. And one silly question, I guess. Have you ever flown yourself to an England game?
I haven't. No, I was, but that's not a silly question, because during the World Cup in Russia, we had a couple of charter flights going over there. So I was kind of disappointed that I missed out on that. But I do have flown. I believe over the years I have arranged myself on my free time 5 charter flights from Bergen to Manchester, flying Manchester United fans over for the games, and we kind of arranged the whole deal. And I'm not a Manchester United supporter myself. It was just something we did for fun, just for the for the joy of it. Yeah. Oh,
right. Well, one thing you did tell me, you say you're not a Manchester United fan. You're actually an AFC Wimbledon supporter. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I actually, it's trying to make a long story short, but I grew up as a Liverpool supporter. But as I got older and as the Premier League and everything got more and more involved with money, I kind of distanced myself a little bit from it. So when Wimbledon broke up and they moved to Milton Keynes, and the supporters did what they did, the fantastic way of starting their own team just for the love of the game and for the love of the real Wimbledon. I was watching this from Norway and I was thinking, wow, this is what I need right now. This is really what I need. This is my core value of football. And so I pretty much started following them back in 2002 when they did that. And the rest of it has been pretty much a fairy tale.
And you said that you run the first official overseas supporters club, is that right? The Norse Dons.
Yeah, actually, we are I wasn't involved back then, but the Norse Dons is actually the first official supporters club that AFC Wimbledon ever had.
Oh, I see.
So we have a very strong relationship with the club, with the management. We've had so over the years. It's really, really fun. And so Hans, who started this back in 2002, has kind of let me run things over the last few years. So yeah, it's a small supporters club. I mean, there's like a following of maybe 40 or 50 of us that follow the team regularly from Norway. So not big, but it's a lot of fun.
I would say that's fairly big, 40, 50 supporters in a different country for a club the size of AFC Wimbledon's size. I think that's great stuff.
Well, there's a reason behind me following England as well. There are just a huge following of English football in Norway. And I've known this over the years, but I didn't realize it until actually I flew over to Manchester for those flights we did back then. The Manchester United Supporters Club in Norway, back then, this was about 5 years ago, they had 460 season passes at Old Trafford.
Really?
It was just, I was blown away. And they said there's about 1,000 Scandinavians on every home game at Old Trafford. So it's quite big numbers. And it's, well, I hope, kind of want to put this message in for your listeners. I know there's a big debate, and there should be, about the English football, the English game, and all the fans coming in from overseas, all the tourists, the Asians and so on, with their iPads sitting alongside and more interested in taking pictures than actually following the game. For us Scandinavians, it's different. We grew up with English football, so our love for the game is quite a bit different from, I think, the spectacle that goes on with other fans that are coming in because of all the fame that's now come along with the Premier League.
Yeah, the big brand that is the Premier League. Yes, you're right. So England then, how? Why? When? How did it all come about for you personally?
Well, back when I grew up in the 80s, it would be normal to have a team in Norway to follow, but I would say it would be even more normal to have a team in England to follow. I mean, everybody who follows football back then would have a team in England to follow. So when you're following English football, at the same time, for me, with all the players and all my favorite players and so on, when it came to championship time, and Norway at the time wasn't a big football nation, so for me it was England. And 1990 was a huge tournament for me, and those memories will live on forever, and that kind of sealed it. And ever since, I couldn't really give up on it. I mean, I became more interested in following the English national team than Norway. And I'm not the only one. I mean, there are a lot of people in Norway that look forward for the tournaments, and they really look forward to see how England will, how they will perform this year. It's a strange thing, but for us Norwegians, it's, I would say, a little bit of a normal thing as well.
Yeah. So when was the first England game that you got to see in the flesh?
Well, I didn't start traveling until my later years. I went to the 2006 tournament in Germany, but I wasn't able to get any tickets, so I would be in the fan zone for that one. And so I have traveled for the tournaments. So the 2010 tournament in South Africa was the first one that I had tickets for the England games.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a great time down there and met a lot of great people. And I've been traveling to every tournament since.
Amazing stuff. And coming over to Wembley as well for the home games.
Actually, it's a strange thing, but I never have, because for me, money-wise, over the years, it's been traveling to London. I kind of feel obliged to prioritize traveling for the Wimbledon games. So,
right.
Yeah, traveling to England, it's always been for the Wimbledon games. Especially, I enjoy traveling for the away games with Wimbledon when, as you know, you get the fans crowded together in the away section, and it's so it's been a kind of a money thing, trying to prioritize the tournaments for England, and then I've been traveling for the Wimbledon games when I go to England.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, there must be a time when conflict between England and Norway comes up. I've looked back through the stats, the games between the two. There's been 12 games between England versus Norway, 7 wins, 3 draws and 2 losses. And the most recent ones, there was a Wembley game in 2014, and there was a game in Oslo in 2012. England won both of them by 1-0. Did you go to the one in Oslo?
I couldn't. I was not. I can't remember why, but I was not in Norway at the time. I was just briefly looking through it before you phoned me up. So I did not. What I do remember really well is the qualification games before the 94 tournament in the USA, I believe.
Okay, yes.
When England shared the group together with Norway and Holland, and we beat England, must have been 2-1, I think, or in Oslo, or anyway, Norway beat England, and I have to say all my classmates had a big laugh of me the day after, yeah. So it's yeah. I was it was a strange thing. I was really, really hoping for England to win, and at the same time, it was a big qualification game. I mean, Norway qualified for the World Cup, so it was a big game for Norway.
Yeah, there was one event that famously happened. It was, I mean, whilst I was alive, I don't remember it, but folklore. It always comes up, and it was actually a famous Norwegian commentator, which I'm sure you're aware of. Is it Bjorn Lillelen?
Yeah, well, in Norwegian it's Bjørg Lillelien. It's another name. It's hard to pronounce. Yes, so
yeah. So Norway beat England in 1981, and famously, right at the final whistle, he was pulling out all famous English people, be it who was it, Henry Cooper, Lady Diana, Maggie Thatcher. Your boys took one hell of a beating, and it's very famous over here. I mean, are you aware of that?
Oh yes, it's very famous in Norway as well. Well, I do not remember the incident. I was 3 years old at the time, but it's a famous commentary in Norway. Partly because it's a funny commentary, but also it's just a huge game for Norway to beat England, and that's because of the love of the English football that is shared among Norwegians. So then to beat this mighty England was just huge, and so it's both the commentary and the fact that it was England, and it became something that was a bit of a pride back then. Yes,
sort of a backhanded compliment, almost, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
England, kjempers fødeland. Lord Nelson, Lord Beaverbrook, Sir Winston Churchill, Sir Anthony Eden, Clement Attlee, Henry Cooper, Lady Diana. Vi har slått dem alle sammen. Maggie Thatcher, can you hear me? Maggie Thatcher, jeg har et budskap til deg midt under valgkampen. Vi har et budskap til deg. Vi har slått England ut av verdensmesterskapet i fotball. Maggie Thatcher, som de sier på ditt språk, i boksebarene rundt Madison Square Garden i New York. Your boys took a hell of a beating. For Maggie Thatcher, Norge har slått England i fotball. Vi er best i verden. It's Norway 2, England 1. What a fabulous night for football. Vær så god, studio.
So we mentioned at the beginning of our chat there, you've met lots of England supporters on the way, following England yourself. How did all of these come about?
Well, it's just these strange coincidences when you travel, and I believe that's part of the reason. Well, it's definitely part of the reason why I love to travel and with the English fans, and I'm sure a lot of other people share the same passion, that you travel abroad and you meet people and who share the same interest. Of course, everyone asks the question, why are you following England? You're from Norway, and then as soon as I explain why, and I think a lot of people understand the love for the game in Scandinavia. So I get kind of accepted pretty fast, and I met so many great people, and a few of them are good friends to this day. I met like Ryan Chapman, who I met on the night bus traveling to Bloemfontein in from Cape Town to Bloemfontein in South Africa. It was a 10-11 hour night ride before the Germany-England game. He's a Cambridge fan, and I've met him since in Brazil. I met him in Ukraine, and it was was very happy when he traveled down with Cambridge when they played Wimbledon when we were in the same division. So it's things like that. It's just for me, it just means a lot to me. Absolutely.
And you say you know Dean Cornish, an England fan.
Well, Dean is a strange story. I was in. That's really a strange story. I had a big AFC Wimbledon flag, and this was back in 2012 for the Euros in Kiev, and all the Ukrainians were. We noticed during the day they were all taking pictures with the flags as we were hanging the flags up, as we were going to the bars and so on. And for the match, we laid the flags out in front, all in front, and then after the match, the stewards would throw the flags back. We were just standing next to the Ukrainians, and a lot of the flags got stolen. So my flag got stolen. I was staying behind for a long time looking for my flag, and I couldn't find it. And as I was going through the chairs, I found this big England flag that obviously had traveled a lot. And it said Stamford on it. And I was the only one left. I mean, everybody was gone. I was still looking desperately for my flag. And so I had this flag in my hands, and I was thinking, I can't just leave this behind. So I brought it with me and got back to Norway, looked up Stamford FC on the internet, sent them a message. And Dean was missing his flag, and I mailed it over. And it was really, really happy times when we met in Russia for the World Cup, and finally we got to have a pint together.
Oh, great stuff! Oh, well, that's good. That's having had one of my flags stolen, to hear that someone has gone out of their way to find the owner of a flag, and I know I can picture the Stamford flag. So, nice one. That's a really great story. No, nice one. And going forward this year, obviously, we know that there's no Euro 2020 to be done, and hopefully it will be next year. What are your thoughts going forward for England next year?
Oh, I think what Gareth Southgate is doing is something to really, really look forward to. He's building, I believe, he's building some sort of character into a team that, like I said, when I kind of was distancing myself from football a bit because of all the money and all the glamour and famousness of the players, what Southgate is doing, I believe, is kind of bringing these, let's not call them megastars, but somehow they are, and just bringing them back down to earth and reminding them, I believe, or at least that's what I try to tell myself that he's doing, is reminding them how the passion for the game and what the tournaments and what the national team means, and then so it's really enjoyable to watch that part, I believe, and I think he's got some good characters, and I believe like Harry Kane, his commitment to the team. I think there's so much talent. There's so much talent, and there's so much young players coming in. So with experience, this can be something really big.
Yes, and I mean there is a distinct possibility, I believe, that Norway could actually make it to the finals. That they're in the. Am I right in saying they're in the playoffs with Scotland?
Yes, they are. I was looking through the schedule for the Euros when I was planning my traveling for the summer this year, and I believe Norway's got. They have Serbia, I know, for the next game, and then possibly I think it's Scotland for the last playoff game. So, if I remember correctly, and if they don't change it by any means now, then I believe England will either have Scotland or Norway. I mean, it's a great possibility it's going to be Scotland or Norway for one of the group games for the next Euros. Yes. Yeah.
Well, you may have the chance to those school friends from a few years back that were laughing at you. You may have the last laugh this time.
Oh, absolutely, I would love that. But I have to say though that if I could choose, I think England Scotland would be a tremendous group game. Like who can forget Gassa back in '96?
Yeah. No, we've had some good games with Scotland over the years, and well, who knows? We'll who knows on the whole. Whatever's going to happen at the moment, but we keep our fingers crossed that it will happen next year, and we'll have some international football to look forward to. Okay, well, I'd like to say thank you very much, Endre, for your time, and well, who knows, in the future we may cross paths and say hello to each other.
Well, thank you, and I'd love to. I mean, that's a huge part of me traveling for the games is, of course, to share beers, to have beers with the fellow football fans. Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you very much, and look after yourself. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you very much for listening, and indeed thank you to Tom and Endre. Both are on Twitter, and you can find them both at Tom_Gayle and at Kleimer Endre, KLIMAENDRE. Now, coming your way in July, we'll have the last in our series of England at the European Championships. We'll do another listener's first England away game, and I have an interview with someone about a very special England team coming up. Now, if you are new to the show, hello. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do at 3 Lions Podcast. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Again, just search 3 Lions Podcast. And as I've said before, if you do have any ideas for a future episode or series, please do drop me a line. It's as much yours as it is mine, this podcast. So please stay subscribed. And of course, most importantly, stay safe. Until the next time, cheers.